Some players say tactics do not matter in Warhammer 3, and sometimes they are right, because overwhelming strength can replace tactics entirely. There are many cases in the game when you do not really have to do much, and you win regardless of decisions. At that point, the battle was decided before it even started. If you massively outmatch the enemy army, for instance if you have a strong doomstack against enemy tier 2 balanced army, you can pretty much do whatever you want and still win. Or if you have a strong spellcaster that can wipe out entire enemy force without ever taking a hit. In other cases you can afford to lose your army and get a Pyrrhic victory without any consequences on the campaign. In game, you can sometimes afford to sacrifice your forces and not worry about casualties. However, there are many cases when tactics matter a lot more than you think. Proper tactics not only help you win battles, but also reduce number of casualties you take. And this alone is what can make or break your campaign. In some cases, you will not fight only one battle per turn. Maybe you will have to chain 2, 3 or more battles with the same army, one after another. If you win first battle, but you take massive casualties, you might lose second or third battle. Your forces will eventually get worn down and lose combat effectiveness they had at the start of the turn. Winning the battle and destroying your campaign are two different things. You also have to think strategically. So before even going in the battle, think what will happen next. Are you going to be counterattacked? Can you win after it? Or do you have time to replenish your forces? Also, by taking less damage in battles, you preserve overall faction strength, and this is more important than the game tells you. If your army gets wrecked, this can start chain reaction and will make your campaign way harder than it should be, even if you won the battle. Neutral factions will start declaring war on you, trying to take advantage of your weakened state. Your faction's strength is usually what deters random war declarations, especially compared to your neighbors with aversion to your faction by default. Even if you are winning on one front, you can easily get swarmed on others, especially in early stages of campaign, when you cannot afford multiple armies to defend from all sides. An army of 19 Hell Pit abominations doesn't always require tactics to win. Sometimes you can just charge straight in, and there is nothing AI can do. But that doesn't only depend on how strong your army is, it also depends on strength of enemy forces. It can work against early to mid-game Empire, but send the same army and attack Wood Elf major settlements with strong garrisons and multiple armies nearby, and you will quickly realize you do not have the upper hand anymore. You might still win by just charging in, but you will take massive casualties, which brings us back to previous point. In best scenario, you will have to re-recruit lost units and waste few turns recovering. And in worst, you can lose the campaign on the spot by getting overwhelmed with war declarations. So as strength difference between your and enemy armies becomes smaller, the more important tactics become. This however goes both ways. You can have weaker forces, but by using proper tactics you can overcome the odds and come on top. Just because the auto-resolve says it's a decisive defeat, it can easily be a decisive victory if you know what you are doing and you have the right tools to get things done. And to do that, you have to read enemy forces, understand what is dangerous about them, and also how your army can deal with it. You need to understand when you can win and when there is nothing you can do. Can you use the terrain in your favor? Is there a certain formation that will negate enemy numbers? Do you have advantage in speed or missiles? Those are all factors that can decide the battle if you use them properly. So tactics serve to give you an advantage when raw strength is against you. Beating powerful opponents with smaller and weaker forces is what makes them so valuable. This is where decisions matter more than stats. However, in Warhammer 3, just like in other games, some tactics work better than others. In my previous video, I talked about cavalry tactics and which one work better than others. Many of those that underperform are limited by game design, like hammer and anvil. A tier 4 cavalry slamming in the back line of goblins will always break them, but if they do the same to iron breakers, nothing will happen. So the tactic works sometimes, but no matter how well you execute it, in some scenarios it will fail. But sometimes tactics do not work not because the game limits them, but because you are using them wrong. Here's a comment on one of my videos where I talked about army building. The viewer said that if you play as Helman Gorst, you can bring Necromancer, Mortis Engine and 18 zombies and deal with early Nurgle, Ogres, Imric, Skaven, Greenskins. This is very much true, and this army relies on blobbing around Mortis Engine and slowly draining enemies while withstanding the damage with regen and healing, which is a very good and powerful tactic, but not always. What will happen if you try to do the same against Chaos Dwarfs? Just one Dreadquake battery hit in the middle of your army and the battle is over. So the blobbing tactic, which is extremely strong in many scenarios, will fail in other cases. And this is not game limitation, this is just wrong tactic for the job. You can still win the same battle with the same army, but you have to use different tactics. So tactics matter most when raw power is no longer enough, and in Warhammer 3, that usually happens sooner than players think. So learning what tactics work and when will increase your campaign success. And you can start here with cavalry tactics. See ya!